Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up earlier today with John Borshoff of Deep Yellow. We talk macro, PFS, DFS, we talk money, we talk M&A, and we talk about getting the band back together. If you want our thoughts on that conversation, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports and analysis. I think you might enjoy that as a learning experience. There are summaries of other interviews that we've done to save you some time. There are training courses to help you with your diligence process. There's also commentary from experts from around the world on a variety of companies and commodities. That is truly fascinating. Weekly series in there that you should enjoy. Plus, a big thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe, friendly environment, free from trolling and abuse. That sounds nice to you. Go and join the waitlist now, and that you'll find that at cruxinvestor.com/club. And we'd love your feedback too. So do give us a like, it'd be appreciated. Leave your comments below. We get back to absolutely everyone. And of course, if you want to see precisely what we talked about with John today, take a look in the description below. John Borshoff, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Long.
Good to be back.
Well, good. It's wonderful to have you back. It's been far too long, but I see you've been quite busy, so we had to speak to you, had to talk to you. But so where are you? In the office?
I'm in the office, Perth. We're out of lockdown, and we seem to be starting to get the vaccination starting yesterday, I think, over the east. So, but we still can't travel overseas, so that's a disappointment.
We'll get there. We'll absolutely get there for sure. Well, I'm delighted to have you on the show, mainly because of your ability to predict the future. You're the only person I've spoken to in the last 2 years who's kind of got the pricing component right. So I want more from you today, John. But before we do, why don't you give me a 1 minute overview of the business for people new to your story, and then we'll pick up some of the topics that we want to discuss today.
Okay, so we've got an organic growth component and an inorganic, which is a sector consolidation. What we've been focusing on the above the radar or above the horizon has been our work that we've done adding value through the drill bit in Namibia, and certainly we have identified a project. Got to a size where it justified a study. Scoping study came out with positive January last year. Now finished a very successful PFS, and we're on the way toward completing a DFS on a large expanded model. So we're very happy with that. The team's enthused, and we've got a lot of other things happening on the sidelines.
Beautiful. Okay, thanks for that. We'll get into some of those topics and more in a second. I want to talk about the market, if I may. Over the last 18 months, there's been lots of these catalyst moments. I think you've been steadily ignoring them. Was that just noise on the line for you, or was the outcome result so obvious that you were able to call the pricing in the market?
Well, basically, my opinion is that you really have to look at the attitude of the utilities and look at their eyes when they're talking and what their attitude is. Whether there's a shortage or whether there's a surplus, whatever they believe is how the market's going to respond. And for me, all of these efforts, which have been worthwhile, mothballing, shutting down, producers thinking that by shutting down they were going to scare the pants off the utilities and price would increase. And in fact, the back market has been sort of supplying with that diminishing inventory, and none of that has worked. And for me, until that utility complacency disappears, until they believe that nobody is going to put real serious development money into projects without a 6 in front of it and per pound, that we're going to have this sort of false belief that everything's okay, and the supply will come. But it's just what's happened the last 18 months is the market has sucked out the inventories, and whatever you thought about it before, it's less now. And but I just think there's still a little bit of ways to go. I think that until the market is truly tested in that shortage area, and then people realise that the the shortage is only 2-3 years away, but to get a development going is 7 to 8 years away. And that then has, development in terms of getting it up to full production, commissioning, ramp up, building, and all of those sort of things that come into play. So there is something happening. It's a fantastic situation that we're in, and it's all great for the producers and the budding producers.
Absolutely. So obviously you're referring to people like Kazatomprom and Cameco, not Mothman, putting their projects in care and maintenance, so their sort of supply into the market's being reduced. But you're also indicating that you don't think that's enough to get the utilities to take it seriously, because they've got inventory. There's some mobile inventory still in the marketplace. So what's it going to take for them to take it seriously, using your word?
First of all, when the utilities go into market and when they seek pounds but they don't get response for it, because don't forget that in the market that is, it'll be, let's say, 70% will be supplied by existing production, and there'll be renewal of contracts, there'll be first right of refusals, all of this, and gradually people will start going over that amount and or over that supply. And so where my prediction is that when that is recognised, it's not going to be 50-cent increase today and another 25 or 10 cents the next day. That period will be one where realisation, that oh hell moment, and everybody will start crowding in. Some trying to save their position beyond their shortage, others trying to fill in, and that's when things will get interesting, in my opinion. The bigger producers, they have a role of coming in and being overly conservative and steady, but even they're getting a little bit of a shrill sense in their voices, and there's frustration that nothing's sort of happening. Again, even the majors are looking at the juniors of over-promising, making supply a simple equation at this sort of pounds. So where and where OPEXs and CapExs can be discussed and debated in an untested, unproven group, but the utilities don't see that. All they see is, here are these companies that are under governance sort of systems that they can't just talk nothing, and they're saying they're going to produce tens and tens of thousands of pounds per annum, just like that, which is not going to happen. And that's not against anything. It's a slow, hard job to get production going for one company, and in unison to try and build up is a doubly, triply difficult task.
It's interesting because you've got people like obviously like TradeTech and UXC in the market who try and forecast the supply and demand in the marketplace, and they're putting the pricing out 2025 at $45. I think you're quite similar, but you've also got a lot of company CEOs, you've got a lot of the funds, you've got a lot of people talking a bit more of a promote game. Their drive, they've got a slightly different agenda, it seems, or it could be interpreted in the marketplace, where they're saying, no, the market's going to recover, pricing's going to recover stronger than that, quicker than that. Why do you think you're right and they're wrong?
Well, there's business about how uranium price will track, and without people thinking of the sort of human psychology that goes with that, and where certain companies are being held. And if you imagine a price that tracks and goes to between $40 and $45 and stays there for a while, it's going to cause all sorts of calamities, both to the major producers and to those juniors that want the kudos of being first cab of the rank. Why the goodness they want to do that is not me. But anyway, that's what they want to do. So there's very little doubt that you might be able to burn up a project, a deposit that somebody else found for you, 30 years ago, and now you've got sort of 10, 12 years life out of it. But what happens after that? Who's going to replace that deposit? And you need a viable industry that can explore, that can put money, that can replace pounds, and shareholders to get rewarded. Volatility of uranium price, where people can say, oh, just on a 2-year price increase, am I going to commit the company to $200 million or whatever the capex is? No. So these things will start to play, and I firmly believe that the message that goes out to the market for people to hear, and even Cameco is indicating this to a degree, they may reinstitute their mothballed projects at 50 or whatever it might be, but new projects, no. We need 60. We need something, and we need long-term surety that price is going to maintain, and you just don't spend the money and you end up on your bum because you're then sort of in a loss situation. No industry can sustain what. In fact, it's a bloody shame and an embarrassment where the industry has been so long, that the only way it survives is through historical contracts that are giving a little bit of a pittance at about $40 a pound. And if it was on to be on operating costs, there'd be hardly any money in it, even on the majors. And no industry is going to survive on that, and it isn't. So all of this is going to turn around, and I think that the message that I've given out is, look, I'm not going to move below 60, 65, no matter what the project is. Let everybody have a go. Let them do. I'll wait. I want to reward my shareholders in terms of what I think they can get.
So
and that's where I think the market is.
Right. So you see, you are aligned with most CEOs in that sense that you want a six handle on it. It needs to be 60 and or above at some point.
Yeah.
Do you think then? And what's your timing on that prediction? When do you think it's going to hit those sorts of numbers?
I believe those prices will be touched toward the end of 2022. I've never made a prediction like this, but my reason is that at that stage that there will have to be some testing of that shortage period. And we're not dealing with a vernier scale here, to say, July 2024 is when there's going to be. This is a crude mechanism, a shortage, goodness me. So even earlier production will be scarce. So about late 2022 for 2024-25 productions, and that's new developments. Some of the ones that have got some existing capacity in the ground where they're mothballed or whatever may think that a 45, 50. I'd just they've got a 55 about they have they'll have some muscle in their sort of viability. But that's where it'll be, and when it goes to 50 or 55, what's to stop it going higher? Which simpleton supply demand theorist is going to be sitting there and saying, oh well, this one crosses that one, and that we got equilibration. Well, equilibration is when you've got so much petrol in your tank and your bloody, still 30 minutes from the airport, there's other factors than supply demand come into your head. You'd pay anything for that extra fuel to get to where you're going. And that's the sort of emotions that will inevitably come to play as people realise. There's a lot of experts talking that know what they're doing on the supply side. Producers, people that have been in that game, understand it. And how can a utility tell me, how I'm doing it and what are my problems? It's like me telling him how to build an SMR bloody reactor. I haven't got a clue how to build it. I've got some principal ideas about what they feed me, and I take that on board. But the supply industry is crying out to survive, and these are very real when you get away from the corrugations of promotion and talking. What every producer is, that thankfully they're there. Unfortunately, some of them are getting knocked off their purchase for various reasons, and where they thought they had a project but they haven't, or it's in a place where it can't go, and so there's not more coming on. There's less coming on. The only one that's come on in the last 4 years, 5, is the Tumas deposit on Namibia, and before that there were the fabulous next gen and fission ones that sort of came in. But that's the one project, one mine, no matter how big, it's not the answer here. As Tim Gitzel said, it needs 3 or 4 MacArthurs every couple of years, and it's really obvious what needs to happen in terms of effort, capital going into the system, expertise coming in, and within that sort of amazing growth, a few project failures allow for that to happen, and that's where I think sometimes UXCs and all of these organisations are sort of so distant, and they're so spreadsheet controlled, and they just can't sort of quite see it in a real sense of with the blood, sweat, and the tears of what it takes to get a pound out of the ground.
Totally.
Into a drum.
Totally. So at the moment, buyer's market, what can people like Cameco, Kazatomprom do in terms of leading from the front? Because the price sensitivity for them is obviously not as great, because they can produce at lower costs, and also they don't necessarily want a lot of competition coming in at this point. So there's a point at which suits them, but not necessarily the rest of the marketplace. But on the demand side, you kind of need all of the above. And within the scenarios that you've outlined, not everyone's going to be able to get into production because it's technically very difficult. There aren't necessarily the skills there to do that these days. And some of the assets just clearly aren't ever going to be economic at even $60. So what's the contribution required from Cameco and Kazatomprom to enable the uranium sector to actually survive, not necessarily thrive, but survive?
Yeah. So what Cameco and Kazatomprom have done, even though they wouldn't have liked it, don't like it, they've played the long game. They've played the game, and it's not playing the game. They've sort of said, okay, we're looking at shutting down production. We're going to do this. We can sustain. We've got sort of contracts, and so in that, a result happens in a horizon that is probably frustrates the eager beavers around them, and they do feel a responsibility of stable markets, and and they're not just going to pull the pin and stop everything. So I don't think the Camecos can do, or the bigger producers, put Orano in there, can do much more than just, for them, even though what they've done has been fairly dramatic when you think about it. But once they've now done that, they're increasing the force in their talk is that we're not going to bring these on unless it is for a reason for it. And there's a real tricky situation happening here. If the uranium price stays at $35 to $45, and what happens here, it's neither here nor there. It's a sort of a twilight zone. So at the moment, Cameco can pick up stock at $25, $28, whatever it is, and clip the coupon and sell it in at $38. So now that can happen, but they're not going to clip the coupon at $3 sort of difference. That makes them like one of these traders. So they'll be forced, maybe, and I'm just conjecture here, is they have to be forced to restart a MacArthur, because the coupon clip is bigger on a production, but not quite what they would have liked to have locked in these long-term contracts, because the whole thing is that you need contracts that are long-term at prices that are open and or market related at term. So you don't have to lock it in, but if it's 70, you get 70. If it's if it's 30, you get 30, or whatever it might be. So there's a bit of it's not a simple Simon thing about how these big companies and also how the small companies sort of restart and put new batteries in their mothballed plants and kick the starter button, and when they start and how they start. There is a whole lot of things that have to connect in terms of sales prices, where they're going, what time, whether they're going to create legacy contracts for their shareholders or too much legacy contract, how much of that they have to commit of that product to leave freeboard for more the upside, and so these are some sort of hard tasks that'll actually frustrate the producers and I believe cause even more of a filter to supply than one would think. It's not a clean start, that it's there, off we all go. And as you say, of the X amount, there's only going to be a certain amount that will qualify for early start, presuming there's an escalating uranium price going, and then a certain of the others are at a sometime later, and some of the others are filling in the back area. So all those pounds are distributed through time by the very nature of capex and opex and uranium price, and how that escalates. So that part is, I think, something that needs to be unravelled a little bit more.
I think it's interesting with regards to all of this, some of the new entrants which have come in and some of the new stories that are being created and generated in terms of uranium juniors. And I suspect there'll be a lot more once things start to pick up as per last cycle. You talk about it a lot. Haven't got the necessary expertise in the sector anymore because it's been a while. People have left the sector, retired, etc. And you've got a lot of young teams talking the game, and they're talking the game around what they think they're going to be able to, well, one, that they're going to be able to produce pounds out of the ground, and two, the kind of indicating sort of pricing that they would hope to be able to produce at. But it's more complicated than that. It's not as easy as some people think, is it?
No, it's the easiest one is starting a gold mine where all you got to do is worry about getting gold at a profit up there, but not who's going to buy it, on what basis they're going to buy it, and all of that. And then everything else to degrees gets more complicated. And then finally, you've got uranium market, which is, it's got its little trickeries, it's got its non-transparencies, it suffers from its military history in terms of, secret squirrel stuff that used to go on and nobody knows each other's contracts. So all of those more confound the market, and basically all of the ones that are sort of on top of the game trying to predict the market is they're trying to see through this veil, and you just have to listen to them in the World Nuclear Association and what goes on there from the two sides, and you think, how the hell can you make an industry out of this when you've got so many conservative technocrats on the demand side? And I'll tell you what, if it was industrialists need vision, they need conviction, they need to be optimistic, and not to, you don't get the Elon Musks by saying, I don't know, this may happen or that may happen. And you don't sort of get to where these people go and get a rocket up there and land it where it came from occasionally, but it still is amazing. And NASA's been doing it for 50 years and can't get them back within 1,000 kilometres of where they took off from. But that's this industry. That's you say, God, what more can you want in an industry that is so available to fix or help assist fix these problems that are up ahead, that are emerging day by day. And you say, oh, well, last year there was only one country that said zero emissions by 2050. Now they're stacking up along the line and without a technology to do it. And you've got to think that, those people that are on the demand side say, well, look, this is what we're about. This is what our nuclear industry, muscled up, can deliver sustainably nearly forever. And it makes renewables subordinate to the problem that's up ahead.
So tell me this. I get your point, and I don't want to get into the renewables discussion with you today, but maybe we can come back to it. But give us a bit of an insight what the conversations at, say, like the WNA or elsewhere, where a few people, you produce quite a few pounds, and you've got long established relationships, and we've spoken to a couple of utilities ourselves, and it seems to be some of these. I just wonder the degree of frustration for you with some of these news stories coming into the marketplace, making big claims about what they will be able to do. And the market's listening because, one, they're raising money, and two, people are buying the shares, right? So, but from our understanding, the utilities are kind of just, shaking their heads and going, not ever will that company get into production. They know. They're smart guys. They know. But at the same time, they're not moving. As per the beginning of this conversation, they're not taking this seriously yet. So there's a sort of disconnect in there somewhere, isn't there?
Yes, for certain is. When you realise how much of the industry is looked after, for want of a better word, by public servants, or people in public service that are running a utility, and they're just engineers, technocrats, and really have never faced, real risk, belief in a vision, and try and do things like what some people used to do in the nuclear startup in the 70s. So essentially, you've got entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, who's avidly supporting. He's got the money. He's pouring money into things. He's saying, guys, this is what we need to do. This is what we need. You got NewScale, or these smaller enterprising groups. Rolls-Royce is now, starting to come up. But of the big ones, the Koreans, they're good. China is probably, of all of the sort of criticism, their public service is actually promoting the industry. They're committing money. They want to go ahead, and they need electricity. So in that way, the industry is its worst enemy in terms of the demand. People, no, we can't say another reactor from that country. Oh, no, this one's done that. By God, you've got to look at it beyond that and look at what the system needs and build your vision in amongst that. But these guys can't talk. They're not bosses of the washers. There are some very, very good people out of countries that are vocal as anything and really understand that the industry is there for the taking, but only for. And I'm on the wrong. I'm off track here, I know, but it is really an important side. And of course, on the supply side of the WNA, there are not that many experienced people in that supply side as well. Yes, you've got your good old usual suspects of Cameco and Kazatomprom, but the industry has suffered in depth from all these sort of events that have happened over the last sort of 40 years that have sort of diminished that pool and diminished companies that have got operations, etc., as we see today. And so in that side, there are more people, I feel, promoting the industry outside of the actual industry. The supply side are natural promoters because that's how they work, and most of these companies are private enterprise companies. And but there has to be real conviction there. And it will grow. The industry will grow in spite of, as these other pressures come on electricity generation and what its attributes need to be to satisfy certain objectives.
Okay, and I see we should probably get off the macro and onto you guys in a second, but I obviously see a press release coming out of Australia with regards to saying that nuclear is critical to future energy supplies, and we're talking about potentially 5 reactors. I don't know whether SMRs or what scale it's going to be. I think it's early days for that one. But yeah, the dialogue is definitely happening. Now, I'm just very conscious. I could talk to you all day about the marketplace, but that's not why you're here. Deep Yellow, you've been busy since we last spoke. PFS has come out. You've said, okay, you're happy with the numbers. It's what you thought it would be. Is that correct?
So what we've got is, and you've got to appreciate that this is a brand spanking new PFS on a brand new deposit that 4 or 5 years ago wasn't even there. So we sort of committed to a geological belief and understanding, mainly because of our familiarity with that whole region, and pursued something that few believe. And we then tripled the resource base, and it became evident that the rest of my team, who are the technical guys that build mines and design the whole thing, look, guys, we can do something with this, and we moved into a PFS. Now, the PFS, where it comes from, it is from an internal sort of IP. We haven't gone out and just sort of, oh yeah, you do this bit, that comes in from the outside, and we just, can't intellectualize, can't argue it. This is something that we know we can build. We know the numbers that are there. It can be done on those numbers. So the PFS has got a certain, I believe, an authority and veracity that can stand scrutiny. And there are a lot of things underneath there that would surprise people in terms of how they're going to benefit the DFS and beyond that, going into production because of the financial models that are there constructing around. So we've got a project that, and what did we do with the PFS? We looked at the size of the resource base and we said, look, we've got to test with the PFS, test certain critical elements of this, and then from that use the PFS as the springboard to where we think we could get a DFS to. So we tested 50% of the mineral resource base, and this is really important, and it was an inferred and got it to indicated, 95% indicated, and of that 63% went to the reserve, and finally that created the basis of the nearly 12-year mine life operation. But what was really the important part is our confidence in that conversion. So that 50% now is a base, and we will convert the balance of the identified resource, the 50%, and aiming at a DFS at 20 years. But the real important part is, beyond the DFS scope, is we've only tested 50% of this 125 kilometre paleo drainage. And we still have 50% of that exploration upside for more resource. So even if, you say, oh yeah, pessimistically, we get another 10 years, overall, outside the scope of how the DFS will project, we've got another 10 years behind. This is a great project. And we're specialists, really, at low-grade exploitation. And that system that we started off in Langer Heinrich and now have developed it even further in terms of efficiency, and what we can do is enabling us to really end up, with the PFS, we've got an EBITDA of $90 million US a year, and it's true. It's got good numbers, and we over-delivered on our scoping study, and we will over-deliver, I believe, in our DFS from what we're projecting in what we've stated in our PFS.
Okay, so I've got.
So it is a great.
Let me ask John, because I've got to deal with some of the stuff which people nearer to the marketplace would be asking, which is when they see a company kind of skip a few stages with the scoping studies, etc. Maybe they would have cause for concern. You're saying your track record and what you've seen in the PFS gives you permission, as far as the market is concerned, to skip a stage and go straight to DFS.
Oh, but PFS it did exactly what we wanted it to do. We've done test work, metallurgical test work. We tried some advancement on things we knew, and they proved positive. Characterizing the ore body, understanding it in terms of the similarities of what we're used to. So this PFS has, in a technical processing sense, done all that we need to do, and the DFS will optimize those. But what is really behind that is our confidence to convert another lot of resources to reserves that will enable us to get to a DFS. We haven't missed any steps. We've gone from a scoping study to a PFS to now going into a DFS, and which will be a bankable document. So we haven't missed any steps in that sense.
Well,
and I think
people understand the terminology, John. Go PEA, PFS, feasibility study, definitive feasibility study, right? So in that sense, people would think there's a stage missed here. But I don't want to hark on about that one, because I think you will probably you'll argue the point quite well, I suspect. But I want to ask the next question, which is, you're using the phrase, it's like Langer Heinrich. So what degree of certainty, technically or otherwise, are you able to use that phrase? Because again, the industry is littered with neurology, and it's like, gold. People are like, oh, it's like Fosterville, because Fosterville's a huge success. So give me your certainty. Why in your head you go, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say?
Don't ever think I'm using the bloody neurology of Langer to bloody well promote. I know more about Langer than probably those people that are there. But anyway, Langer is in a paleo channel, fertile paleo channel, which has one mineral of uranium. It's called carnotite, in amongst sort of old river sediments. You come to the Tumas paleo channel, it's the same sort of paleo channel system, river system. It's got the same depositional sediments in it. It may be a little bit finer grained, and the uranium is in the same base as what it is at Langer. So the mineralogy and how that mineralogy acts to process is exactly the same. I mean, this is not a complex sulfide deposit where it's got all sorts of different things that come into it. These deposits work remarkably similarly, and the Tumas deposit is, 4 meters to 25 meter average depth over a long linear length, and they're remarkably consistent. And there's no other minerals in it apart from a complex of uranium and vanadium, and that's why I'm saying it's a Langer equivalent, so people can understand.
Beautiful. Good enough for me. A few other things have happened, John. I'm excited for the fact you've kind of brought the band back together. You've got some of the ex-Paladin guys have come aboard. They're obviously buying into the story too. I think that should say a lot. You've also raised $40 million in an SPP. Why now? Was that always part of the plan?
Well, why now is that I believe the run for shareholder wealth will, for us, start from now. And we've stated our use of funds are for completion of that DFS, which will take a certain amount of funds, exploration upside, as I mentioned, beyond what the DFS is. We're looking some other targets with our Japanese friends next door, and we are also then looking at our M&A. And the whole thing is that this needs to needs to be sort of executed upon within the next 18 months. And we need a war chest that is commensurate with the vision that we have. It's not sort of, oh yeah, we've just got this single trick pony and we're going to just develop that, and you think, oh, what else are you going to do? And so the scope of what is available to us means that amount of funds is necessary to have as you talk to other people, as you go to even getting to the next phase of our DFS, pre-financing. So I think that it's a really appropriate amount of funds that we got, and that will hold us and the shareholders in good stead.
Okay, and I know you've probably gone out and told the story a lot, so I don't necessarily want to get you to repeat the same stuff that you've already put in the market, but I'm keen to understand of those applications, uses of funds. You've got exploration, you've got the Nova JV with JOGMEC, obviously, and you talked the M&A game, when we last spoke, and you have done for 3 or 4 years now, is how are you prioritizing the money in terms of what's most important in terms of building value for your shareholders? If you can put a percentage.
I would say equally. I'd say equally the our M&A and our DFS are equal. You've got to see that when we look at a project through our skill set, through our IP, we don't look at their DFS and say, oh, well, this is good. We will only be interested if that DFS provides a basis for us to apply what we know and give a delta of value over and above what's recognised, and to see the risk issues. So I believe that these two strategies are part and parcel. I would have loved to have had a project last year, and we the amount of work we're doing in there, and which would amaze people, and it didn't detract from us completing our PFS. We can manage our time. We can manage what we do. We're evaluating about 3 or 4 of these things, and then how they suit where we want to go. It's all part and parcel of the total holistic company.
Okay, that's interesting to me. I wouldn't have guessed you would apportion it equally. So if I may then, on the M&A, you've had time to look at loads of companies, loads of assets around them. You know where they all are. You know everyone. So I assume you've been having some conversations. So given the market's recovering, things are getting more expensive. It's all relative, but it's still nevertheless getting more expensive. Are you seeing anything out there that you are attracted to and think that you can get over the line? Or is it just, again, it's just a waiting game to sort of see if something comes up, see if there's a distress situation? Is there a distress situation out there?
Well, I think in the end, you talk to a lot of people in the game, and you're probably talking to the only person that's actually built a uranium company in the junior brigade. I don't want to harp on this too much, but that's a fact. So you've got to work out yourself as the interviewer to say, this guy that I'm talking to today, will he be there 4 or 5 years, that guy, that drum, that board that is going to be pulling out and selling yellow cake, drums full of yellow cake? And if you say yes, every one of those will be, well, you and I on a different path. So this opportunity that we offer is something that we can take on that responsibility and with that credential and all that it offers both to that company and to our own in terms of its shareholders. There are sort of certain difficulties in getting that alignment, and people on the face of, oh yeah, this is a great idea, and then when it comes to what needs to be sort of sorted out, it takes a bit of time. There are other things now that that are available to us as well, because of this recalibration of companies, and even in relative market cap terms, things haven't got out of control that much in terms of the value, in terms of, if what we see in some of these in terms of the value that we can extract from them still leaves, much room for creative value. But we can't talk about it. B, we can't talk about it to those groups because until something's done, it's our information in terms of how we see some of these things. So all I can say is there's discussions going on. I think as the events come closer, those decisions have to be made more quickly, in my opinion, both for the other companies and ourselves. I mean, we've got options they haven't. I'm not interested in doing strategic involvement with utilities. Why should I? Why should I carve off 25% of my project and lose that power of that project? I'll turn it into a contract and own 100% of it if I can get my finance and if I can do all of these sort of things. I think the team has that overall credibility to think like this, but not to sort of, a little bit selling your soul. That utility, all it wants is product. So there's all sorts of ways that things will come in terms of how Deep Yellow can think and package certain things, as long as companies don't give away in the meantime too much to others.
You feel in control. You want to maintain 100% control of any M&A activity going forward, not open for partnerships, strategic or otherwise. No. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that in terms of the actual projects themselves, they can be all sorts of things. They can be a farm-in, they can be, a joint venture where we have operational control. They can be all of the above in what you could imagine M&A to be. And I'm not precluding it, but I am saying that it has to be of accretive value to everybody and not just an exiting for one party where they don't care what happens in terms of the consequence.
Gotcha.
And
gotcha. So let's talk about JOGMEC, because people look at Japan and go, are they ever going to get their nuclear reactors back online? Why would a Japanese company be involved with uranium?
Yes.
What's happening?
And that's a very good point, actually. The underlying sort of belief of the Japanese, or those ones that think how Japan is going to survive, is really personified in the new Prime Minister. He's saying, hey guys, you can't do it without nuclear. We're going to go zero for 2050. Nuclear is in. And that's what I call leadership, and it'll go where nuclear has to be, maybe now, in the sort of 30% share, and not this bloody Dreamtime stuff that was going on before. And even though the previous governments believed in nuclear, to have the fortitude to say this is what's going to happen. And I think many countries are doing that.
I think they are. We talk about it in our weekly uranium show on the Private Investors Club that we have, and that's been a big topic. One of the questions comes up quite a lot. So the way the geopolitics works and the way that countries are having to sort of backpedal or at least kick the can down the road. So fascinating space as always. Love talking about it every week. So I think just to kind of summarize, because I know I've taken a lot of your time on a Monday evening. I mean, honestly. How could I? I'm so bad. Is PFS? It's what you wanted. It's telling you what you wanted, what you thought you would hear. It's a kind of multi-cycle type size in terms of the scale here. You're clear about what you need in the marketplace. It seems on pricing, and you think the market will probably start paying attention sooner rather than later. You got the band back together. I'm seeing. We haven't talked about it, but I'm maybe one for next time, because again I'm conscious of the time frames here. And M&A not ruled out, but it's got to be the right deal for you guys.
Yes.
That's not a bad conversation, John.
Yes.
That's a lot we talked about today. I've loved it.
But I think it's as I say, when we get to our next thing, I'd love to chat with you. I always do, and see if we can get this sector moving. Not just me, but the whole supply demand issue.
Well, John, I loved it. Thank you very much. Keep saying what you do and doing what you say. We love it. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us the time, mate.